The sky above is a beautiful, terrifying lie. You see the stars, but they flicker like dying server lights. The ancient constellations glitching at the edges, as if the simulation is failing. A storm of digital noise swirls around you. Frantic news reports, panicked YouTube clips, 1,000 voices screaming about prophecies, planetary alignments, and the looming shadow of September 23rd. The sound is a tidal wave of fear, threatening to pull you under. But then, a single voice cuts through the static. A voice that sounds like it was carved from stone and sacrifice. A voice that understands the weight of the cross. It speaks a truth so chilling, it silences everything else. Mel Gibson revealed a terrifying secret about that date. It's not a date, it's a diagnosis. The forbidden truth isn't that the world is going to end. It's that for most of us, it already has. We are just too distracted by the calendar to notice the casket we've built around our own souls. You feel it too, don't you? That quiet, humming dread that settles in the late hours when the distractions finally fall away. It's a gnawing emptiness, a sense that the world is spinning faster than your soul can keep up, leaving you breathless and hollow. You scroll through your phone in a dark room, the cold blue light painting your face with the ghosts of other people's lives, and you feel it then, a profound sense of waiting. Waiting for what, exactly? Aside from the heavens, a sudden cataclysm, a divine intervention that will finally give your story a purpose. We've all become watchers, spectators in our own existence, staring at the sky for a cosmic event to save us from the unbearable silence of our own hearts. We look for meaning in planetary alignments and ancient texts, anywhere but in the sacred, terrifying present moment, unfolding right before our unseeing eyes. This prophecy, this date, circled in shaky red ink on the calendar, became an obsession for me, and maybe for you too. It promised a grand finale, a moment when all the noise would finally resolve into a single, clarifying chord. I consumed it all. The frantic videos, the breathless articles, the whispered warnings that echoed through the digital darkness. It was a feast of fear, and I devoured every last crumb, hoping it would fill the void inside me. But the more I consumed, the hungrier I became for a single drop of truth. We are a generation drowning in information but starving for wisdom, desperate for a prophecy from the outside to save us from the unbearable weight of the inside. We want the world to end because we don't know how to begin to live, how to face the quiet apocalypse happening within our own spirits every single day. I remember the night it all broke. It was 3 a.m, the hour of wolves and private despair. The only sound was the low hum of my computer, its screen a constellation of open tabs, each one a different theory, a different timeline, a different flavor of fear. I felt a profound loneliness, a sense of being completely and utterly lost in a sea of digital static. A single tear traced a path down my cheek, a salty admission of my own exhaustion. I had searched the entire universe for an answer, from the far-flung stars to the deepest corners of the internet, and found nothing. In that moment of absolute surrender, I realized the question wasn't about when the world would end, but why my own world already felt like it had. Have you ever felt that way, utterly alone in a world full of noise? This feeling, this deep and unsettling ache, isn't just mine. It belongs to all of us. It's the universal dread of time itself, the quiet horror of watching the sand slip through the hourglass of our own lives. You see it in the face of a mother watching her child go to school for the first time, a flicker of joy mixed with the sudden, sharp realization that this moment will never come again. You feel it in the dead of night when the only sound is the ticking of a clock, each second a hammer blow against the walls of your mortality. We've become so terrified of the present moment slipping away unlived that we've outsourced our sense of urgency to a future catastrophe. We look to the heavens for a deadline because we are too afraid to face the one written in our own biology on our own skin. This search for a cosmic event is really just a search for meaning, isn't it? It's the same question that has haunted humanity since we first looked up at the glitching, simulated stars and wondered, why am I here? We feel a profound emptiness, a sense that we are characters in a story without a plot, actors on a stage with no script. So we grasp for prophecies, for alignments, for any grand narrative that promises our small, seemingly insignificant lives are part of a larger drama. We want to believe our struggles matter on a cosmic scale. The unspoken terror that drives us to these dates on a calendar is not that the world will end in fire and fury, but that our own personal world will end with a quiet, unnoticed sigh, our purpose unfulfilled, and our song left unsung in the vast, indifferent silence. And beneath it all lies the oldest fear, the one that gives all others their power, the fear of suffering and death. We are fragile beings, living in bodies that can be broken, in a world that guarantees loss. You see a headline about a distant tragedy, and for a moment, you feel the chill of your own vulnerability. You hold the hand of a loved one in a sterile hospital room, breathing in the scent of antiseptic and finality, and you understand that the apocalypse is not a theory. It is a personal, intimate reality waiting for us all. The September 23rd prophecy, and every prophecy like it, is a desperate attempt to organize our terror, to put a date on the inevitable chaos. We seek a collective end to avoid facing the lonely, terrifying truth of our individual one. I was completely lost, adrift in a digital sea of impending doom, drowning in dates, planetary alignments, and whispered warnings that promised revelation but delivered only a deeper anxiety. I had consumed so much information that I was starving for a single drop of truth, a sliver of genuine meaning in the overwhelming noise. In that moment of absolute despair, alone in the sterile glow of my monitor, I didn't pray for a sign in the heavens or a crack in the sky. I prayed for a translator. For someone, anyone, who understood the brutal sacred language of suffering and could make sense of my own quiet apocalypse. And in that silence, my thoughts turned to Gibson's Christ, to that raw, unflinching, human depiction of God in agony. I turned off my computer, the cacophony of theories finally silenced, and put on * the Passion. I wasn't looking for answers anymore. I was looking for a presence. Watching the film began not as an act of faith, but as a final, desperate investigation. My mind, still buzzing with the frantic energy of 1,000 conspiracy theories, tried to map the prophecies onto the screen. I saw the scourging, the brutal, rhythmic tearing of flesh, and I tried to interpret it. Was this a symbol of the Earth's coming tribulations? Was each lash a metaphor for a specific disaster foretold in some ancient text? I was treating the holiest of stories like just another piece of data, another clue in a cosmic scavenger hunt. The sound of the whip, the sickening thud against skin and bone, was just noise I was trying to decode. But the raw, undeniable humanity of the suffering resisted my attempts to turn it into a sterile allegory. It was not a symbol, it was a reality, and my intellect, my research, my desperate need for a logical pattern shattered against it. My search turned inward, grasping for the flimsy comfort of rationalization. I replayed conversations in my head, dialogues with friends who would tell me to just log off, to touch grass, to see a therapist. I told myself this feeling was just anxiety, a chemical imbalance amplified by late nights and too much caffeine. You've probably done the same, haven't you? Tried to shrink a spiritual crisis down to a manageable psychological problem. But every time I tried to soothe myself with these logical reassurances, the face on the screen, bloodied, determined, and enduring a pain beyond comprehension, mocked my efforts. His agony was not a neurosis. His sacrifice was not a symptom. My attempts to explain away the profound ache in my soul felt like trying to patch a gaping wound with a cheap bandage, a profound and insulting denial of the sacred horror unfolding before me. This was the end of the line. Every path I had taken, every human attempt to solve the riddle of my own fear, had led to a dead end. The internet gave me noise. My own mind gave me empty rationalizations. Even this film, this powerful testament of faith, was not giving me the answer I thought I wanted. I was still on the outside looking in, a spectator to a sacrifice I couldn't comprehend, feeling the full weight of my spiritual bankruptcy. There, in the flickering darkness of my living room, I finally understood. I could not think my way to peace. I could not research my way to salvation. I could not rationalize my way to God. The search itself was the problem. My frantic effort was the barrier. I had to stop trying to solve the mystery and simply let it solve me. As I watched the scourging, my analytical mind finally broke. The sound design was a masterpiece of horror. The wet, percussive tearing of the whip, the sickening thud of wood against bone, the ragged gasps of a god being systematically dismantled. The screen was the only light in my world, a window into an agony so profound it felt obscene to even witness. I couldn't intellectualize it anymore. Overwhelmed, I closed my eyes, but the images were burned onto the inside of my eyelids. In that self-imposed darkness, a voice emerged. It wasn't in my ears, but in my soul. A voice with a texture of gravel and grace, the raw, unflinching timbre of Mel Gibson's faith. It was direct, without pity, yet filled with a fierce paternal love. "You're looking in the wrong place," it said, the words cutting through my panic like a surgeon's blade. The voice continued, its truth resonating in the hollow space where my theories used to be. "You're staring at the stars, searching for a sign in the heavens, but the entire prophecy is written on his back. Every lash is a letter, every drop of blood a word in the only language that matters. You're waiting for the world to shake, for the ground to split open, but the only tremor that can save you is the one that shatters your own pride. Stop looking for a cosmic event to save you from your life. The real cataclysm is the one that happens inside a soul when it finally stops running and turns to face the source of its own salvation." The message was a brutal mercy, dismantling my obsession with the calendar and forcing me to look at the cross. It wasn't a comforting whisper, it was a loving roar, a final desperate plea to see. "The answer isn't coming on September 23rd, the voice concluded, its resonance shaking me to my core. "It's already here. It has always been here, hanging on a splintered piece of wood, bleeding for a world too busy looking at its clocks to notice. The secret you've been searching for isn't hidden in ancient texts or planetary alignments. It's hidden in plain sight, in the terrible, beautiful spectacle of a love so absolute it was willing to endure this. The problem isn't that the truth is hard to find. The problem is that you haven't had the courage to truly look at it." And in that silence, I opened my eyes, no longer a spectator, but a witness. And so, through the unflinching lens of this raw cinematic faith, the truths were finally laid bare. They were not whispered comforts to soothe a child in the dark, but clarion calls to a soldier asleep on the battlefield. They were 7 revelations, 7 hammers to shatter the fragile glass of the September 23rd lie, each one delivered with the terrible mercy of a surgeon's knife. The first truth landed with the force of a physical blow, a direct confrontation of my entire misguided search. The prophecy is not a date, it is a state. Asterisk. The end of the world is not some future cataclysm you mark on a calendar. It is the spiritual death you choose every single day. It is the casket you build around your own soul with every click, every scroll, every moment you choose the anesthetic of distraction over the demanding presence of devotion. You are already living in the apocalypse if your heart is a tomb. The second revelation followed, turning my gaze from the heavens to the earth, from the abstract to the agonizingly real. 2. The sign is not in the sky. It is on the cross. Asterisk. You scan the constellations for meaning, searching for planetary alignments and celestial portents, desperate for a sign that you are seen. All the while, you ignore the ultimate, undeniable sign that has been screaming its truth for 2,000 years. It is not a distant flicker of light. It is the splintered wood against a bloodied back, the rust of nails, the weight of a divine body hanging between heaven and earth. This is the only alignment that matters. God aligning himself with human suffering. You have been looking for a cosmic riddle while ignoring the most profound and brutal love letter ever written, a message written not in starlight, but in blood. Then came the third truth, a direct assault on the very engine of my anxiety, the tyranny of the clock. 3. Time is not a line, it is a choice. Asterisk, you perceive your life as a frantic line stretching from a past you cannot change to a future you cannot control, and this perception is the source of all your fear. But the past is a ghost, and the future is a phantom. The only moment that has ever existed, the only point where grace can enter and salvation can be offered, is this one. Right now. This very breath. This single sacred heartbeat. The choice presented to you is not about preparing for a future date, but about inhabiting the eternal present. Eternity is not a length of time, it is a depth of presence. Will you live here, now, or will you let your life be stolen by ghosts? The fourth revelation dismantled my hope for a painless escape, replacing it with a far more terrifying and beautiful promise. 4. Salvation is not an evacuation, it is an incarnation. Asterisk. You pray to be lifted out of your suffering, to be raptured away from the pain and chaos of the world. But the promise of the cross is not an escape. The promise is a presence. You will not be evacuated from your Gethsemane. You will meet God inside of it, your deepest pain, your most profound loneliness, your darkest hour. These are not punishments to be endured or obstacles to be overcome. They are the very ground He has chosen as a meeting place. He descends into your wreckage. He makes His home in your heartbreak. Your suffering is not a sign of His absence, but the very place He is waiting for you. This led to the fifth truth, which reframed the very thing I hated most about my life, my own specific personal burden. 5. Your cross is not your curse. It is your compass. Asterisk. You despise the unique weight you carry, your specific fear, your chronic illness, your broken relationship, your secret shame. You see it as a flaw, a punishment, a sign that you have been abandoned. But what if that burden, that very thing you wish to be free of, is actually a sacred instrument? What if it is a compass, perfectly calibrated to your soul, its needle perpetually pointing you back toward Him? Stop despising it. Stop trying to throw it off. Pick it up. Carry it. Follow where it leads. The path of your greatest resistance is the most direct route to your divine purpose, the one true path home. The sixth revelation redefined the very word that had fueled my obsession and terrorized my nights. The apocalypse is not destruction, it is unveiling. Asterisk. You hear the word apocalypse, and you imagine fire from the sky, cities crumbling to dust, the end of all things. But the original Greek word, times apocalypsis asterisk, means something far more intimate and far more terrifying. It means an unveiling, a revelation. The great and terrible day is not the destruction of the world, but the stripping away of all your illusions. It is the moment when you are forced to see the unvarnished truth of your own heart. It is the unveiling of your deepest motivation. In the end, when all the noise is silenced and all the masks are removed, what will be revealed? A life lived for love or a life lived for fear? Finally, the seventh truth landed, not with the sound of a judge's gavel, but with the quiet, shattering clarity of a perfect reflection. 7. The final judgment is not a verdict, it is a mirror. Asterisk. You imagine standing before a throne, a long list of your sins and failures read aloud for all of heaven to hear. But the final judgment is not a cosmic courtroom. It is a moment of ultimate intimacy. You will not be shown a list of rules you broke. You will be shown your life in its entirety. Every secret thought, every hidden kindness, every moment of fear, and every flicker of love. You will see it all through His eyes, eyes that are not filled with condemnation, but with a sorrowful, profound love. And then you will be asked the only question that has ever mattered. did you learn how to love? And in that profound, terrible stillness, as the storm gathered over Golgotha on the screen, the tears finally came. They were not the hot, frantic tears of fear I had shed in the lonely glow of my computer, but a flood of cool, crushing, beautiful recognition. Every fear I had, every anxious night I spent scrolling through prophecies, every moment of dread, it wasn't a curse. It was a pilgrimage. It was the misguided, desperate path my soul had to walk to arrive at this very moment, at the foot of this cross. My weakness, my susceptibility to the noise, was the very thing that made me desperate enough for the silence. It was the divine splinter in my heart that would not let me rest until I found my way here. My anxiety wasn't a sickness. It was a homing beacon, its frantic, painful signal leading me back to the source of all peace. The great, earth-shattering revelation that Gibson's raw faith unveiled was this: the entire purpose of prophecy is not to make you look at the future, but to force you to live fully and desperately in the present. It is a divine act of mercy. The looming threat of an end time is not a terror tactic. It is God's final loving plea for you to stop waiting for your real life to begin. It's a spiritual air horn blasted into the ears of a sleeping generation, begging us to awaken to the sacred miracle of the now. The fear I felt, the urgency that gripped me, was a gift. It was the pressure needed to crack open my hardened heart, to make me finally seek an answer beyond the shallow comforts of the world. It was a sign, not from the planets, but from the deepest part of my own being. My frantic search for a date on a calendar was a search for permission to finally live, to finally take my own existence seriously. And the answer, bleeding from that screen, was that permission has always been granted. It is granted in this very breath, in this single heartbeat. Eternity is not a timeline that stretches into the future. It is the profound depth you can find in this singular moment if you only have the courage to inhabit it. The cross is not just a historical event. It is an ever-present reality, an invitation in every second of every day to die to your fear and be reborn into a love that transcends time. The apocalypse I had so feared was not the end of the world. It was the end of the illusion that my life could be lived anywhere but here, now. So what do we do now with this terrible and beautiful truth? How do we live when the calendar no longer holds any power over us? We stop looking up at the glitching, simulated stars and start looking around into the eyes of the people God has placed directly in our path. The next time you feel that prophetic anxiety begin to rise, that familiar cold dread of the unknown future, you must channel it into action. Instead of scrolling through headlines for another update on the world's potential end, check in on a neighbor who you know is lonely. Instead of trying to decode a cryptic sign in the sky, make it your sacred mission to see the face of Christ in the next stranger you meet. Your family, your work, your private struggles. That is the holy ground. That is your Gethsemane and your Golgotha. The prophecy is fulfilled every single time you choose presence over distraction, love over fear, right here, right now. The screen fades from the raw spectacle of Golgotha to a soft, warm light, as if the first rays of a new dawn are breaking not in the sky, but within your own room. The storm has passed. The digital static is gone, replaced by a profound and holy silence. The prophecy of September 23rd, once a terrifying deadline, has become a sacred birth date, the day the search ended and the journey truly began. The cross is no longer a distant, historical symbol of suffering, but an anchor, a compass, a permanent fixture in the landscape of your own soul. Your small, hidden life, the one you thought was a meaningless prelude to some grand, cosmic finale, is revealed to be the very stage for the greatest event in history. The daily, moment-by-moment choice to love. The only time that truly matters is now. I'm curious, as you're hearing this, what time is it for you? Let me know in the comments where you are in the world and what time it is for you in this eternal, sacred moment. Let's ground ourselves in the now together and begin. The screen fades from the raw spectacle of Golgotha to a soft, warm light, as if the first rays of a new dawn are breaking not in the sky but within your own room. The storm has passed. The digital static is gone, replaced by a profound and holy silence. The prophecy of September 23rd, once a terrifying deadline, has become a sacred birth date, the day the search ended and the journey truly began. The cross is no longer a distant, historical symbol of suffering, but an anchor, a compass, a permanent fixture in the landscape of your own soul. Your small, hidden life, the one you thought was a meaningless prelude to some grand, cosmic finale, is revealed to be the very stage for the greatest event in history, the daily, moment-by-moment choice to love. The only time that truly matters is now. I'm curious as you're hearing this, what time is it for you? Let me know in the comments where you are in the world, and what time it is for you in this eternal sacred moment. Let's ground ourselves in the now, together, and begin.